Hi guys, this is Audrey from Fairview Public Library, and I'm working with Tiffany from McDonough Public Library, and we're bringing you a series of mini book talks about the Georgia Children's Book Award nominees. There are 20 titles on this list, and they are used for the Helen Ruffin Reading Bowl contest held in January every year. This year's titles are some great stories about family and loyalty and friendships and how to deal with some loss. They're all really terrific stories and they come highly recommended. The first story I'm going to talk about today is The Season of Styx Malone. Season of Styx Malone is by Kekla Magoon. Let me read you what's on the inside cover. Caleb Franklin and his big brother, Bobby Jean, have the whole summer to explore the woods in Sutton, Indiana. Caleb longs to venture beyond their small town, but his dad likes the family to stay close to home. Then Caleb and Bobby Jean meet new neighbor, Styx Malone. Styx is 16, and he oozes cool. He's been lots of different places. Styx promises the boys that together they can pull off the great escalator trade, a way to turn one small thing into more and more until they achieve their wildest dreams. But as the trades get bigger, the brothers find themselves in over their heads. Styx has secrets, and Caleb fears that their whole plan just might fall apart. In this madcap, heartwarming, one thing leads to another adventure, friendships are forged, loyalties are tested, and miracles just might become possible. Again, this is The Season of Styx Malone by Kekla Magoon. It's a story about some boys who are looking to spend their summer doing some other things. Then they meet Styx Malone, and yeah, he is cool. They want to spend their time with Styx Malone. Mom and Dad aren't too sure about that. He might be a bad influence. But let me tell you what Styx says about the great escalator trade. Once there was a guy who wanted to see how much he could get in exchange for nothing. So he asked a friend if he could have a paper clip. The friend gave him the paper clip for free because it wasn't worth much. No big deal, right? Then the guy took the paper clip and he went to a different friend. He asked that friend if he'd be willing to trade him a cheap ballpoint pen in exchange for the paper clip. Now, a ballpoint pen is slightly more valuable than a paper clip, but it's still not worth very much money in the grand scheme of things. So the friend agreed. And the guy kept doing this. He took the cheap ballpoint pen and traded it for a roll of Scotch tape, and then for a pair of scissors, and then a stapler. And he climbed his way through small office supplies until he was trading a paper shredder for a laser printer. Thus, the concept of the great escalator trade was born. The guy took his laser printer and started exchanging for other kinds of electronics until he traded his way into a brand new laptop computer. Every trade he made was for something of approximately equal value, and it wasn't very unfair to any of the individuals he was trading with. But all along, he was trading for something worth slightly more than the last thing. So that's what Styx Malone has been teaching Jean, Bobby Jean, and Caleb Franklin this summer that he met them. And it leads to a lot of adventures, and the boys find themselves in a little bit of trouble too. But it was a really good story, very entertaining, and I really think you'd like it. Let's hope that this one can win the Georgia Children's Book Award nominee. Okay? Each Tiny Spark by Pablo Cartea. He has written a few other books, and they have been on the Georgia Children's Book Award list before. But this particular story, I really like it because it actually happens here in Georgia. The characters in this action actually takes place in the Atlanta metro area. Back in the 1990s, when we were preparing for the 96 Olympics that were held in Atlanta, a lot of people from other countries came here to help us prepare. They got jobs, they worked in construction and hospitality and other areas. But you know what? They all stayed. A lot of international people stayed in the Atlanta area after the Olympics, and they chose to make their lives here and raise families in the area. So we have a lot of diversity here in the Georgia area, in the Atlanta area specifically. And this book kind of goes along with that. This particular character is of Latino descent. And let me start by reading to you what's on the inside cover here. Amelia Torres has a wandering mind. It's hard for her to follow along at school, and sometimes she forgets to do what her mom or abuela asks. But she remembers what matters, a time when her family was whole and home made sense. Amelia expects that her life will get back to normal when Dad returns from deployment. Instead, it unravels. Dad shuts himself in the garage to work on an old car. Amelia peeks in on him daily, mesmerized by his welder. One day, Dad calls Amelia over. Then he teaches her how to weld, and over time, flickers of her old dad reappear. But as Amelia finds a way to repair the relationship with her father at home, her community ruptures. And with some of her classmates, like her best friend Gus, he's at the center of the conflict. Each tiny spark is a tender story about asking big questions and being brave enough to reckon with the answers. Each Tiny Spark by Pablo Cartella. Amelia is in 6th grade. She starts middle school. And she realizes that there are no easy answers. And to add insult to injury here, Mom takes a temporary job out in California, and she lives with Dad, who's back from the military, and Grandma. And she has to rebuild the relationship with her dad, which is a little strained because he's still dealing with some issues that went on when he was fighting in Afghanistan, or on deployment, excuse me. So I'm not exactly sure what he did, but they never went into that. But she has to reconnect with him. And when he was gone, she did a lot of video type recordings and sent him videotapes when he was in Afghanistan, filmed by her best friend Gus. So here they are starting a new school, and they have an assignment. The Department of Tourism wants to know what they like about their community. And she loves her community. And she loves the people she went to school with and the people she lives with. But some of the people were kind of getting tired of all the diversity, I guess. And the school system is actually talking about redistricting the area, which would mean her going to a new school. And she just started in this middle school. She doesn't want to have to change schools. So there's a big argument going on in the community. And luckily, because she reconnects with her dad, she is able to start repairing that relationship there. He is able to help her get some answers to the big questions that she's got going on in her mind. So this is a really great story. I would highly recommend it.
Hello, and welcome to another Georgia Children Book Award nominee and Helen Ruffin Reading Bowl Book Talk. If you're just joining us, my name is Miss Tiffany from McDonough Public Library, and this video series features 2 titles from the 20 that are up for the Georgia Children Book Award. Before we go into our books today, though, I do want to tell you about voting for one of the 20 books. There's also a picture book section, so if you have read all of those, you can also vote for that as well. Most public schools will collect the votes. However, public libraries do it as well. Some do. Our McDonough branch will actually have that option this year. So voting will open in January and it lasts until March. So if you have some time to read all the titles and decide which one's your favorite, then you can come by the library and cast your vote so that way it has a better chance of winning. Okay, what we're going to do is we are going to talk about 2 titles today. The first one is Blended by Sharon M. Draper, and the second is Lemons by Melissa Savage. How we normally do it, if you've not joined us before, is we read the book jacket and then I tell you a little bit more about it without going into any spoilers. All right, are you ready? All right, so this is Blended by Sharon Draper. The inside book cover says, "You're so exotic. You look so unusual. But what are you really?" 11-year-old Isabella, whose father is black and mother is white, is used to these kind of comments, but it doesn't mean she likes them. And now that her parents are getting divorced and getting along worse than ever, Isabella feels like a push and pull me toy being split between mom and dad is more than switching houses, switching nicknames, switching backpacks. It's switching identities. If you're only seen as half of this or half of that, how can you ever feel whole? So that's what the book jacket says. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it. Blended by Sharon Draper could also be a very good conversation starter for a juvenile audience for several reasons, chiefly about divorce and racially blended identity, but also police misconduct. Being stuck between 2 very different families is tough, especially because most young kids automatically feel safe and secure in their home environment without questioning it. But when divorce gets pulled in and you have different kinds of situations happening at both houses, then those lines get fuzzy. And so you start to question things going on and who you really are and how that impacts you. Being part of 2 cultures can also be confusing, as well as when you're suddenly put outside of one and then pulled right back in the next week, like Isabella is. Lastly, the surprise and confusion about being seen as one thing because of the way you look. And then being misjudged for it. For example, her and her soon-to-be stepbrother did not understand why the police officers were acting a certain way, since in their minds, police are supposed to protect kids and keep them safe. Sharon Draper does a great job at lending some understanding to all of those situations while keeping it in the 11-year-old voice of Isabella, and in that frame of mind that's appropriate for juvenile audiences, and it helps identify with them. So as an adult, you can read this and get a good perspective on maybe what a child is thinking is going on. And as a kid, you guys who are reading these for the Georgia Children Book Awards or Helen Ruffin Reading Bowl, or just for fun, it can maybe give you a little bit of understanding of what friends who are split between 2 different households might be going through, or the culture divide between different things. And it's a must-read for all audiences. So if you really like it, definitely suggest it to your friends. And hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more of these books. Sharon Draper is a fantastic author, and she does a great job of taking serious situations or things that might be uncomfortable or things kids are going through and putting it in a voice where they can be relatable to and start to understand what they're going through. All right, so that was Sharon Draper's Blended. And next up, our next book is not as quite impacting in the ways of social situations, but it is a fantastically enjoyable read with a new sense of what home is as well. That's something they have in common, because in the story, the main character has to also figure out what her home environment is going to be like what it means to be home. Because in Sharon Draper's Blended, I specifically remember Izzy being like, I don't really feel like I have a home. I just feel like this is mom's house or dad's house. So in Lemonade, that's her name, she has a similar situation with figuring out where she wants her home to be through a summer. But I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and we will read the inside and then talk about it some more. Lemonade Liberty Wits, Mama always told her. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. But Lim doesn't see how she could possibly make lemonade out of moving to Willow Creek, California, a tiny town filled with tall pines instead of skyscrapers, and a Bigfoot lurking in the woods. Lim wanted to stay in San Francisco after her mama died, with her friends and school and everything she loved. Instead, she was forced to go live with a grandfather she never met. Then she meets quirky 11-year-old Tobin Skye, the CEO of Bigfoot Detectives, Inc., who is the sole Bigfoot investigator for their small town. After he invites Lim to be his assistant for the summer, the two set out on an epic adventure to capture the elusive creature on film. But Lim and Tobin's big discovery ends up being more earth-shattering than they ever dreamed. So, instead of reading this title, I actually listened to the audiobook. A lot of these titles are available on eReads Kids. If you have a Henry County Library card, you have access to that. Listening to the story is always fantastic because the audiobook narrator, in this case, Tara Sands, they do a great job at giving the emphasis to the characters and giving them their voices, which is exactly what Tara Sands did when she read Melissa Savage's book. She made it like she made Lim and Tobin and their adventures so engaging and heartfelt and hilarious more often than not. Like, I laughed a lot just listening to it. Throughout the story, Lim is learning how to adapt with her new life without her mother, and our author, Melissa Savage, does a great job at moving her through the process of accepting the loss of a loved one without overtly pointing out that she's doing so. The narration of the story is really light and relatable and definitely in a kid's voice. It's another heartwarming story about discovering new family ties and deciding what it means to be part of a family that you didn't expect to have, and how to move on or accept the loss of a loved one, like I said. Especially for Lim, who she thinks it's so tough, and her advice has always been to make lemonade out of the lemons life hands you. And she definitely managed to do that in the story, as well as helping her friend Tobin in a way nobody expected them to figure stuff out. This book is definitely a must-read, again, for all ages, and I hope that it will be on your to-read list soon. So that was Blended by Sharon Draper and Lemons by Melissa Savage. Again, both of them are must-reads for everyone. Even as an adult, I highly enjoyed them. So I hope that you will as well, and we will see you again in my final video, where we will be discussing Two Night Owl from Dogfish. So that will be the last one from me. There's still other titles that Miss Audrey is doing, and once we complete this project, I will be starting a new book series, so I'll be looking for suggestions of children's juvenile novels to read, so that way I can tell everyone about them. Hope you guys have a great day. Bye!